I'm Nicole Urken, Research Director for Mad Money, and welcome to Behind the Scenes of the show. I'm here with Jim Cramer, and we're talking retail turnarounds and what has not been a turnaround, JC Penney. Now, Jim, we heard Monday after the close, Ron Johnson was pushed out as CEO. This has been a stock we've lamented for a long time on Mad Money.
Stay away, stay away, stay away.
But the thing, I was looking back at a lot of the analyst reports back from January 2012, around the analyst day, where he laid out his plan, and there was such exuberance for the stock. And it seemed to be misplaced, especially as you've said, that a turnaround in retail can be very difficult.
Well, I mean, I think that some of the enthusiasm came from a belief that he was behind the most successful retailer of our time, which is Apple stores.
Right.
Some of it is because he was the merchandising director for a very big term in Target.
Right.
But also there was a belief that Mike Ullman, who's now the new CEO, hadn't done a good job, and if he just revitalized the stores, the stock, which was down 17% versus a big up for a lot of the other stocks, and Ullman, the stock did not increase under Ullman's tenure. It was just a gem, an unpolished gem, and this man was going to unlock it. And what he ran up against was the GM-Toyota problem. GM in the 60s and 70s realized they had a big problem. Toyota was coming here, and they didn't want to alienate their older customers by putting out newer kinds of models that would be a defense against Toyota. JC Penney has an older demographic customer base, and they are used to couponing. And Ron Johnson came in and immediately scrapped that. And he didn't tell people who shop there all the time that they're not going to have that anymore. So all those people, those were GM customers, so to speak, and they were abandoned when he decided to take on the Toyota world, which is like the Walmart world. But he didn't understand you can't roll it out quickly.
That reminds me actually of Reed Hastings and Netflix, a very different story. But by changing the pricing plan, he really didn't hold on to his core customers by switching over to streaming, which was very smart and insightful of him in the long term, but he didn't manage it appropriately.
No, and look, the store-within-a-store concept, actually Ullman actually had it going with Sephora. It's kind of ironic.
Right.
But he keyed on Martha Stewart. That could blow up because of the lawsuit. Being able to get her home goods stuff. He keyed on PVH, but it was legacy business. You know, this is I like PVH very much, but the stuff is not proprietary to JC Penney.
The other idea, to give him some slack, we've looked at a number of other turnarounds that are specialty retailers. We've looked at Pier 1, we've looked at Ascena Retail, we've looked at Chico's and Gap that are more focused.
Gap had a great balance sheet. Pier 1 started from a point of view of just a new guy. Alex Smith came in, and it was incredibly poorly run. But they also had the housing trade going for them.
Exactly.
What Johnson didn't understand is that you take a core culture, and what you got to do is you got to gradually get out of that, not with guns blazing. You got to try 25 stores. And see what happens with those 25. And then over time, roll it out. Particularly
when you don't have that housing driver and you're competing in this dollar store, Walmart, very competitive landscape, everyday low pricing, coupons, that very, very, I guess, touchy dynamic where you can't really switch between one or the other too quickly.
Remember, your JCPenney customer didn't want this stuff. And your non-JCPenney customer rebelled against going to JCPenney because it's got a very, very bad image. My belief is that the department store is itself an endangered species, and Macy's, there's room for a couple. There's room for Macy's. May not be room for JCPenney. I come from a retail background where my parents both worked at department stores, and I thought that they were invincible. And when I saw them disappear very quickly, I realized that this is there's no tenure in retail, and there's no God-given right to retail, so to speak. So JCPenney may just go by the wayside. Just may disappear.
I want to finish on a high note, though, because we always emphasize strong CEOs on Mad Money. And on Squawk, you mentioned, well, maybe he could have looked to some of our strong turnaround names, like a Howard Schultz at Starbucks, or Jim Senegal that founded Costco. There is a celebration of retail for the guys that can execute correctly.
Look, Starbucks was went from 30 to 17, 18 under Jim Donald, who was actually a pretty good guy, but he just overexpanded quickly. And what Schultz realized is you have to very quickly cut back in the U.S. where it was bad, and very quickly move overseas, which is good. And Schultz has a really good management team. It wasn't spread thin. Whereas Penney Ron Johnson never moved to Plano. His people didn't move. A lot of his people didn't move to Plano, and so it left a kind of an existing culture that was on top, that was underneath a new culture that wasn't viewed as being full time. It was almost being viewed as carpetbaggers. And so you had a toxic relation. You had a toxic headquarters. You had a group of customers that were immediately alienated. You had new customers who didn't flock to it. You ended up with a disaster, and that's why you had to go.
Got it. We'll end on disaster. Thanks. Lots of lessons from JC Penney. We'll keep them in mind when we're looking at turnarounds. I'm Nicole Urken, Research Director for Mad Money with Jim Cramer. Stick with us. Thanks.